National Aeronautics and Space Administration announced the discovery of clear signs of extraterrestrial life by the James Webb Space Telescope. The discovery was made on a planet known as K218b. Two minutes ago, the James Webb Telescope proved that time does not exist.
Time does not exist. I have 15 minutes to try to convince you of this.
The idea that the universe began with a big explosion has been ingrained in the minds of billions of people for a long time. But science is not a fixed idea. Sometimes science is wrong. Sometimes science makes big mistakes. Sometimes science gets it really wrong. Many scientists know there are a lot of problems with this idea of the Big Bang, and the new images from the James Webb Telescope are proving to us that we are wrong and that we should be concerned about our assumptions. This time machine, also known as the James Webb Telescope, which cost $10 billion from National Aeronautics and Space Administration, discovered 6 giant galaxies that completely destroy our current understanding of the universe. And if you haven't watched this video yet, I recommend it. It'll be up here in the card. Watch it later. But just a few minutes before I recorded this video, an even more surprising discovery than the previous one is shocking the scientific community. This discovery is proving that time doesn't exist. So like past, present, and future don't exist. And obviously, everything we believe, this whole notion of time that we have, is a real illusion. The James Webb Telescope is demonstrating that time doesn't exist. But how? How is that possible, and how did it do that? Well, the Big Bang Theory states that the universe was formed about 14 billion years ago. But when this image from the James Webb Telescope was analyzed, scientists realized that this image contradicts the Big Bang Theory. In physics, we have that saying, if it can't be observed, it doesn't exist. And then when we do observe it, we can't believe what we're seeing. It's like that saying, I'll only believe it when I see it. I see it, I don't believe it. So, if the Big Bang Theory is wrong and we've believed in it for decades, what else could be wrong, huh? Well, the answer is everything is wrong. What do you mean, everything? Everything. In this video, I'm going to take away a bit more of the ground that's still under your feet, so I wish you the best of luck. And it's not very hard to understand why all of this is happening. Well, we thought we knew that the universe has been expanding since the Big Bang, right? That was a fact, it was a given. And in this universe that keeps expanding, galaxies and all other objects technically shouldn't appear smaller as they move away. But after a certain point, they should actually appear larger because the light coming from them gets smaller when those objects are close. So, as these objects move away, they shine brighter, and as a result, they should appear larger, right? No, that's not right. In the James Webb Telescope image, the objects are getting smaller as they move farther away. So, even galaxies that are bigger and brighter than our own Milky Way appear to be 2 or 3 times smaller in the James Webb images than they looked in the Hubble telescope images. In other words, the Hubble telescope was tricking us into believing something that wasn't true. Therefore, these images are the proof that contradicts the theory that the universe is expanding. And if the universe isn't expanding like we thought it was, the Big Bang never happened. And you can imagine, guys, the real panic this caused in the scientific community. Because after all, most of the scientific community supports this Big Bang Theory. And according to the Big Bang Theory, nothing could exist before it, right? Why? Because before the Big Bang, there was no universe. If there was no universe, there was nothing. At least that's how we used to think it was. So, how would we explain galaxies that should take billions of years to form, forming just 500 million years after the Big Bang? That's exactly it. There's no way to explain it. We wouldn't be able to explain it. Why? Because everything suggests that the Big Bang never existed. And with that, with the non-existence of the Big Bang, we can conclude that time as we know it also doesn't exist. Why? Because as the Big Bang happened, time started to be counted, time started to exist. If the Big Bang didn't exist, time doesn't exist. Some theories suggest that time is just a human construct to help us understand the perception of what is today, what was yesterday, and what will be tomorrow. The concept of time then would be an illusion created by our memories. In other words, because we have memories of something that technically happened yesterday, yesterday exists. But does it really exist? As much as we perceive time this way, like, oh, yesterday was the past, today is the present, and tomorrow will be the future, this idea might just be an illusion of our minds, trying to explain a phenomenon that may have never existed. Speaking of time, I just realized that I recorded the whole video with my watch crooked. Maybe that's a subliminal message. For physics, there is absolutely nothing concrete that can prove that time moves in this way. Past, present, and future. There's even a theory that says when the universe stops expanding and starts contracting, time will also start moving backwards. And in this case, it would be the opposite of the Big Bang theory, which is something that contracts instead of expanding. A universe that heats up instead of cooling down. There are many dilemmas, and we humans are always asking the same questions. Maybe the problem isn't with the answer we're getting. Maybe the problems are in the questions. And all of this is to try to justify our own afflictions. It's an affliction to think and be sure that time doesn't exist. Because after all, if time doesn't exist, what is my whole life? What is all of this that I've lived? It's an affliction to think that the past we believe existed never existed. And it's an even greater affliction to think that the future we think will exist also won't exist. And it's something even worse, it's a sacrifice, a suffocating feeling for a human to think and realize that the present doesn't exist either. And that the changes we've observed happening during our lives actually didn't happen. Because absolutely nothing has changed, because time doesn't exist, and everything is an illusion of our brain. It's exactly the past, the present, and the future that give us this illusion of the ego. This illusion of understanding who we are, what we are made of, and especially our life experiences, right? Because today you are the result of everything you experienced in the past. But if the past doesn't exist and the present doesn't either, and the future won't exist either, who are you? Who are we? Is that why so many philosophies emphasize the importance of living only for today? Is that why humans get so sick from worrying about a future that doesn't even exist yet? And also because they regret so much about a past that only exists inside our big heads? Well, maybe that's why we're looking into space to find these answers. Because we need these answers not for the advancement of science, but for ourselves. So that we can understand where we came from. To satisfy this incessant pain of not knowing what we are here for, where we came from, and most importantly, where we are going. So, if nothing makes sense, and if technically everything we think we know tends to change quickly, what does that make us necessarily? A few weeks ago, I posted a little video on Instagram that went pretty viral. This video shows our size compared to the size of the universe. And it shows our insignificance compared to the significance of the universe. And why did this video go so viral, huh? Was this video really that good? Or was it that deep down people were identifying with it? Trying to find a reason where there is none. And to wrap up this video here, what if, in the end, that's all there is? Extraordinary minds constantly questioning themselves because they can't accept the simple fact that we are just too small to truly understand what the universe is and what it's for. National Aeronautics and Space Administration announced the discovery of clear signs of extraterrestrial life by the James Webb Space Telescope. The discovery was made on a planet known as K218b, which is about 120 light years from Earth. But what signs of life are these after all? The signs of life were detected in the form of dimethyl sulfide, which has the acronym dimethyl sulfide. It's a molecule that on Earth is produced only by living organisms. Dimethyl sulfide was detected in the atmosphere of planet K218b, and it is a gas planet that is the same size as Neptune. Besides dimethyl sulfide, the James Webb telescope also detected the presence of methane as well as carbon dioxide and hydrogen in the atmosphere of this planet. These molecules can also be produced by non-biological processes, but their presence together with dimethyl sulfide is a strong indicator of the existence of life. The discovery was made by a group of scientists led by Christopher Stark from the University of Arizona. The scientists analyzed data from the James Webb telescope, collected in July of 2022. And this discovery by James Webb is a very important milestone in the search for extraterrestrial life, because this is the first time that signs of life have been detected on a planet outside the solar system. The discovery also opens up new possibilities for space exploration, because if life is really found on the planet K218b, this could lead us to new missions to study the planet and to search for evidence of more complex life. That is, of course, on the day when we have enough technology to get closer to that planet. This extremely strange discovery by the James Webb telescope was met with enthusiasm by many scientists, but it was also criticized by some experts because, let's be honest, there are always some party poopers, right? But that's just how it is, isn't it? There's a pretty famous saying that goes, trying to convince an ignorant person who is sure they're always right is to devalue yourself and lower your knowledge to their level. So that's how it is. No one is going to be able to convince anyone of anything, especially if that person is an ignorant person. Because the ignorant person is so sure within their own ignorance that they can't see anything outside of it. There's no point in trying to convince someone who is trapped and very sure of their own ignorance. Deep down, these people are terrified. These people who think they're the big shots in science, physics, mathematics, and the universe are terrified that their empty convictions will be shaken. That's why they act this way. But now, coming back to the case of the James Webb telescope discovery to wrap up this story, some critics argued that the presence of dimethyl sulfide in the atmosphere of K218b could be explained by non-biological processes, such as volcanic activity, for example. Other critics stated that the discovery is premature and that more data is needed to confirm the presence of life on this planet. But despite the criticism, the discovery by the James Webb telescope is a very important step in the search for extraterrestrial life. And I agree, I agree with those people. I agree that to confirm the presence of life on this planet, scientists will need to collect more data about it. All of this is very clear to me. In any case, the James Webb telescope will continue exploring all the information coming from that planet. Now, whether we get a confirmation or not, that's another story, another subject. Because we know very well that when it comes to information that's sensitive for the population of planet Earth, that information doesn't reach us in its entirety. But besides the James Webb telescope, there are other projects underway to search for extraterrestrial life. The Euclid Space Telescope, which will be launched in 2023, will search for habitable planets in other galaxies. The Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope, which will be launched in 2025, will study the atmosphere of planets outside the solar system in search of signs of life. So in the coming years, it's quite possible that new evidence of life beyond Earth will be discovered, or even that extraterrestrial life will be found. About this specific discovery, by James Webb, It was made using a technique called spectroscopy, which is a method that measures the energy distribution of an object at different wavelengths. Spectroscopy was used to measure the energy distribution of the light that originates from the atmosphere of the planet K218b. And the analysis of the spectroscopy revealed the presence of dimethyl sulfide and the presence of other gases and other components of the atmosphere of this planet as well. This spectroscopy analysis is very precise, so it's not possible for this data to be wrong. But the question that won't go away and the question that remains here for the end of this video is, are we really prepared to know the truth? If a simple little mummy already made people jump on tables, tear themselves apart, and dance, imagine what a discovery of this magnitude could bring to this complicated little planet we call home, huh? I honestly don't understand what's going on in the minds of these people who need to self-validate. And maybe that's exactly why we're so behind in space exploration. Because we are such egocentric creatures that we can only look at our own belly button. And then when we're looking outward, we're always starting from our own ego, trying to validate our own truths by looking outside. Guys, it's not going to happen. It won't work out, right? It's sad, but that's the reality. Such a powerful discovery was made. And this will completely change our understanding of the universe. Everything we thought we knew, we don't know anymore. You know the Big Bang? That hypothesis that proves our universe would have originated from an explosion? Well, it seems that hypothesis doesn't exist anymore. Is that really so? Is it really true that this hypothesis doesn't exist anymore? That's the thing, right, guys? We are placed here on this little planet and we develop consciousness. After that, we start to wonder why our tiny little planet, located on a small arm of the Milky Way, developed to have 9 billion inhabitants and the others technically did not. What do we have that's special that the other planets don't have? Well, the James Webb telescope is a kind of time machine because it can look into the past at the oldest formations in the universe. Michio Kaku, who is one of the most famous physicists in the world, broke his silence and spoke about these discoveries last week. Could it be that we've always been wrong about our understanding of the universe? Could it be that everything we believed in has finally fallen apart? I'm Carol Capel, your favorite alien. Welcome to another video here on the channel. I have noticed that YouTube isn't sending notifications about my new videos to those who always watch here. If you got the notification for this video, congratulations, that's a miracle. So I've been thinking of new ways to make sure these videos reach you, so you can keep following the channel's videos here. The first way is that instead of waiting for YouTube to deliver the videos to you, you go to YouTube, search for my name, Carol Capel, and you'll find my channel. Then you click on the channel and watch the latest videos and have your weekend marathon. Now I'm going to tell you everything about this discovery from the James Webb telescope. The lenses of this telescope are sensitive to red tones and longer tones within the infrared spectrum. This means that not only can it see farther, but it can also see into the past. It can show us things that were happening billions of years ago. It really is a true time machine, isn't it? Speaking of time travel, in a very remote time when space-time didn't exist, according to the theory of cosmic inflation, the universe would have been born from a huge explosion, which wouldn't necessarily be an explosion, but rather an expansion. Imagine a center of mass that's very hot, very dense, condensed, and suddenly this mass expands and goes to all the places that we now know as our universe. A few seconds after this expansion, that is, after the Big Bang, space expanded faster than the speed of light and doubled in size about 100 times. So, from that primordial moment until today, the universe has been expanding, and as it expands, it cools down. 400,000 years after the date of that explosion, that is, after the date of the Big Bang, the universe was experiencing something that was known as a period of darkness. A period where nothing could shine since the universe was too hot. After that, the universe began to emerge from that twilight, and something we know as the era of reionization started to happen. And it was exactly during this time, which lasted about 500 million years, that the first stars began to appear. So, scientists thought that galaxies would have started to form only in the first half-billion years after the Big Bang, right? But the James Webb telescope found, at the beginning of April, 6 galaxies that were fully formed within the first 500,000 years of our universe's existence. It's important for me to mention here in this video that galaxies aren't things that just form simply. It's not something that happens overnight. But these 6 specific galaxies formed at a record speed. And what exactly does that mean? Why is that important? Well, because this could forever change everything we know or everything we thought we knew about the universe. Now I have a tricky question. Why is it that the science on our planet is so dedicated to studying space and discovering everything that's out there beyond Earth, but not as dedicated to discovering what we have at the bottom of our oceans? Well, it's certainly because something very scary lives down there. They must know things that we don't know. Well, it's just a question here. It doesn't have much to do with the topic of the video. But getting back to the topic of the video, a team from the University of Minnesota analyzed more than 13 billion years into the past. And they realized that the galaxies that existed at the beginning of the universe are very different from the ones that exist today. And this made us realize that the universe in its early stage was much stranger than we imagined. And that wasn't the only thing they discovered, okay? They also discovered a black hole that's as old as our universe. But for us to understand how these things work, we need to know that scientists estimate our universe is about 13.8 billion years old, okay? Almost 14 billion years old. And this black hole would have formed just 570 million years after the Big Bang. Which means it's the oldest black hole that formed and that we know of. And because of these discoveries, some lines of research are claiming that the Big Bang never existed, but that our entire universe exists inside a black hole. And this has raised questions like, what if everything we know is actually a lie? What if the Big Bang isn't actually the beginning of our universe? What if everything we see today, stars, planets, exoplanets, black holes, everything we know as our universe is actually existing inside a black hole that connects this universe to a parallel universe? This unconventional theory suggests that black holes formed in our universe give birth to baby universes. In other words, our universe could be nothing more, nothing less than the product of yet another one of these black holes. And we at this very moment would be living inside a black hole. And that, in fact, the most feared stellar body by us is actually our home. All of this is very scary and leads us to an even crazier theory, which is the multiverse theory. In other words, several universes existing at the same time. If everything we know is actually a black hole, what exists on the other side? What's on the other side of the black hole? Could there be other universes? Yes, there could be. Stephen Hawking, for example, once said that every time we see a black hole here in our universe, inside that black hole, there could be a new universe which can be seen through its edge. In other words, within this idea, who knows how many universes exist one inside another, inside another, inside another, and inside another. Of course, guys, to explain all of this in detail, I would need much more than just a simple YouTube video from a class. Maybe you would have to study cosmology at a university to really understand the processes behind everything I'm saying and all these claims I'm making here in this video. But in any case, once again, we're questioning all our certainties and becoming even more certain that we absolutely know nothing. In the year 2003, the starry sky of our planet was being routinely observed when a small yellow dwarf was detected in the constellation Phoenix, which is located in the southern celestial hemisphere of our planet. This star was named WASP 96b. 10 years later, in 2013, the Super WASP telescope detected an extremely rarefied gas giant in the immediate vicinity of this star. A preliminary analysis of the atmosphere of this gas giant revealed that it is a transparent planet. And 9 years later, in 2022, a more in-depth analysis was conducted, this time with the help of the James Webb telescope. And this analysis shocked the scientists of our planet. This planet, which seemed to be a gas giant, turned out to be a planet that had clouds. In other words, a completely opposite observation from that first observation made, proving once again that James Webb is rubbing it in our faces that our understanding of the universe is extremely limited. And now that we have James Webb, our understanding is no longer limited. We are shocked to find out that things are not as we imagined out there beyond planet Earth. The universe where planet Earth is located is an extremely hostile place. Strange things, increasingly stranger, have been discovered and found thanks to the advent of advanced technology now incorporated into the James Webb telescope. And to start this whole story here, did you know that the James Webb took more than 25 years to be completed? Well, it is positioned in a place called the second Lagrange point, which is where our planet casts a shadow, so that the light from other celestial bodies and even the light reflected by our own planet doesn't interfere with the photos with the lenses of the James Webb. And right in the first days of observation, it already made some bizarre discoveries. One of them is exactly that discovery I mentioned at the beginning of this video about wide-angle search for planets 96b. It is a very bright exoplanet with a very low density, which means it is located at 0.45 astronomical units from its star. And what does that mean? It means that in just 3 days, yes, 3 days, it completes a full orbit around its star. So every 3 days on that planet, people shout Happy New Year. According to calculations, the mass of this celestial body is half the mass of the planet Jupiter, and it is 20% larger than the planet Jupiter. In other words, it's bigger and lighter. And precisely because of how close this planet is to the main star of its system, the temperature there is extreme, reaching 1285 Kelvin, or in other words, 1000 degrees Celsius. These analyses were done before James Webb arrived. But thanks to the arrival of James Webb, it was discovered that its outermost layers have water vapor, which condenses in the atmosphere and forms huge layers of clouds. We still can't know for sure if these analyses are correct because the exoplanet wide-angle search for planets 96b is much more mysterious. B is much more mysterious. And every time we look at it, it shows a completely different characteristic. It's as if the planet changes itself every time we look at it. The mystery is so great that we can't even tell if the planet changes on its own, if our observations are mistaken, or if all of this is just an illusion to confuse the way we observe neighboring exoplanets. So what do I mean by that? That it still needs to be studied in greater detail. James Webb is a telescope capable of observing not just individual objects, but it can observe immense structures in the universe all at once. One of the biggest and most impressive examples of this is the Eta Carinae Nebula, or the Carina Nebula, which is one of the largest star nurseries in our galaxy. Besides being absolutely beautiful, right? Just look at this image, it's gorgeous. That cluster there, super bright and gorgeous, is immense and is located 8,500 light years from planet Earth. And it has the mass of 900,000 suns. You know our sun? That's right, 900,000 times more. And it's in that place, that beautiful place, where the two brightest objects in the Milky Way were found. The Eye of Eta Carina and also Wolf-Rayet 25. And we're talking about two objects that have a luminosity millions of times greater than our sun. And it's in that region of space where millions of new stars are constantly being born. In other words, this place is literally an incubator for new stars. That's why we call this place a nursery. But according to current concepts, these new stars are formed thanks to gravitational forces, which compress and heat the clouds of cosmic dust. Have you ever wondered what you are? Who are we? What are we? Well, you should know that you are exactly that, a little speck of cosmic dust. The process of a star being born through the union of gravitational forces is still not completely understood by science. Many details of these processes still need to be studied. But thanks to the James Webb Telescope, thousands of protostars can be seen at different stages of evolution, even inside that nebula there. All these objects can only be seen thanks to a phenomenon we know as gravitational lensing. And it's thanks to these observations that science believes our universe was formed 13.8 billion years ago. In other words, almost 14 billion years ago, that would then be the age of our universe. But it was also during an observation with the James Webb Telescope that everything we believed kind of fell apart. And why is that? Well, because there is a star, Henry Draper 14,283, which is a supergiant, or in other words, a supergiant. It is no less than 14.46 billion years old, which means it is older, it is more ancient than the proposed date for the beginning of our universe. If the universe was formed 13.8 billion years ago, how can we have a star that is older than the date of the formation of our universe? Well, you can't. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, this made all our theories about the age of our universe and even the proposal of the creation of the universe by the Big Bang fall apart. Because after all, every time we look out there beyond planet Earth, every time we look at the universe, we discover that everything we thought we knew was wrong. And every time we look, the observation, the certainty changes, and that's exactly the point. If you stop to think deeply, you'll realize that nothing, absolutely nothing matters. Look at yourself, look at your size compared to all of this. We think we're very important, that our problems are immense, as big as the universe. But I'm sorry to tell you, we're not important, and our problems aren't big. Compare your whole existence. I don't know, for example, I'm 34 years old. Compare that to the oldest star in the universe that we can observe right now. It is 14.46 billion years old. Well, but who knows how many others like that exist. The Earth itself has existed for about 4.5 billion years, and one fine day we were put here. We appeared here. There will come a day when humanity, if it doesn't self-destruct first, will launch telescopes millions of times more advanced than the James Webb Telescope. And we will discover that our beliefs, even our deepest beliefs, like the one about the origin of our universe, are increasingly mistaken. And could this perhaps put humans in their place? If we discover these things, if we understand these things, will we put ourselves in our little place? This likely won't teach humans that the more they know, the less they know. I'm not a fortune teller, but I doubt it. I think it's the opposite, because the true greatness of the human being lies in their own ego. Because if you look at the whole, if you look at the core, if you look at nature, and you really realize that absolutely nothing matters, you'll understand that we are what? What are we? We are nothing but cosmic dust. We're already starting this video here with this bombshell. A former CIA agent stated that the James Webb Telescope detected an extraterrestrial spacecraft coming toward Earth. And if it weren't for this former agent, we would only find out about this news in 2027. Now, there's something really serious happening in the United States regarding this unidentified flying object topic. And I'm always here on this channel trying to cover these news stories as quickly as they come out. There is indeed something odd happening, and not just today. You know, we recently talked about the Nimitz incident here on the channel. That incident led to all those public hearings in the United States Congress where both sides, Republicans and Democrats, are calling for the disclosure of these cases, which until now have been classified. These cases, by the way, are completely of non-human origin. But what just happened now, and yes, this is extremely urgent news, is that something is happening, but it's not being reported. Something that is still very hidden. Not many people are talking about it, but it's something huge. Something that affects all of us, humanity as a whole. Something that, if it's true, in other words, if it's not just a rumor, but if it's true, it will leave humanity in complete chaos in the year 2027. It's something that promises a catastrophic scenario for 2027. Because according to the news, there is something coming from deep space that is heading toward Earth. Something that astrophysicists have known since 2017, and that is not being communicated to anyone. The governments of the United States, Canada, China, and even Russia are aware. And we, the ones most interested in this story, don't. And it seems like a pretty strong rumor to me, okay? By the way, according to my experience investigating these cases, even though they're reporting this as a rumor, I don't believe it's just a rumor. I think it's serious. John Ramirez, who is a former CIA agent, this man right here, is openly saying exactly what I just said. He claims that the James Webb Space Telescope detected this object coming from deep space and that this object has a movement pattern that is completely artificial. It's not an asteroid, it's not any kind of supernova, any kind of star, it's not a rogue planet, but rather it's an object that accelerates and decelerates with an artificial pattern. And this man is saying that this object is extremely large and that in 2027 we will receive an announcement about the approach of this object. What is this, guys? Is it a mix between the movie Don't Look Up and that series, The Three-Body Problem? Do you remember that Netflix series I reported about here on the channel? That series talked about exactly that, about an object that was coming toward Earth, an object that had been discovered by Chinese scientists, and that object was actually an extraterrestrial spacecraft. What is this? Is fiction becoming reality? Well, I don't know if you know Luis Elizondo. He's also one of those famous whistleblowers in alien cases. He worked in the Pentagon's secret unidentified flying object program. This program, by the way, was something the Pentagon said didn't exist. After much pressure, the Pentagon admitted the program's existence. This man, my dears, Luis Elizondo, has been talking about these phenomena for a long time, and no one has really given him much credit. Until the Pentagon confirmed it, and seriously, it was epic. Now, of course, Luis Elizondo is also involved in many controversial cases. And I don't believe 100% in everything he says. It's not like that either. It's not just because he said it that we're going to believe it. But some things he's been saying for a long time are proving to be true. So I believe him. Not 100%, but there are definitely some strange things going on. And that's exactly why I always tell you that we need to have critical thinking and analyze things and consider things seriously and responsibly. So it's not just because someone said something or because you're a fan of that person that you're obviously going to believe everything that person is saying. And here on this channel, what I want to help you with is developing this critical thinking to understand that I'm sharing news, but even I don't believe 100% in this news. But the rumor is strong and there's a potential for this news to be true. And Luis Elizondo, he's one of those guys who's very controversial, who says some things that don't make much sense, but we can't deny that there are a lot of truths in his words. He says and confirmed the information that there really is this object coming toward Earth. And that's why the United States is raising awareness among the population about these subjects now. These are subjects that, in fact, the United States used to say didn't exist, that they weren't real. Do you remember that until recently the United States denied everything? Absolutely everything. Well, according to Luis Elizondo, the reason they stopped denying it is that there's something coming to planet Earth. And when that thing arrives, they won't be able to hide it from anyone. So it's better to start preparing the population for it. We can't deny that it's really strange, right? Until not long ago, the United States denied every single case that happened. And then some drastic change happened, and today they admit things that just a few years ago they would never have admitted. So I find it strange because, after all, what motivated this drastic change? What motivated the United States to talk about these terrifying objects that are being analyzed, that are being received here on Earth, and that violate all the known laws of physics? And that are really not of human technology or origin. For example, guys, a fighter jet, an F-16. If we apply 13 G-forces to its wings, the wings break. But these objects, they exceed 500 times the force of gravity. So we can't say that these objects are from Earth. There's just no way. We can't say that these objects are human technology because human technology doesn't do that. All these UFOs that fly over our cities with more and more sightings appearing on video every day. These same ones that stay in the air, they go into the water, they split into two, they go back to outer space. Guys, what is this? Is it really Earth technology? Are you sure? It's so bizarre, there's no way. It's not Earth technology. Nothing on this planet has the ability to do the maneuvers that these objects do. And after all, is this story really just a rumor? Well, there's an account on Twitter, and after all, is Twitter working again in Brazil or not? Can someone confirm that for me down here? Well, there's an account on Twitter called Challenge Reality. It's an account dedicated to the topic of UFOs. On that account, there's a post saying that John Ramirez, who is the guy I showed you before, has one of the highest ranks in the CIA, which is the General Schedule, 15 rank. And on that page, there's a video of John Ramirez himself confirming the information I shared with you, that this object does exist and that it is coming toward Earth. So I'm not going to put the video here also because of copyright issues, but if you have Twitter, or if Twitter comes back in Brazil, you can go to that page and watch the video I'm talking about. But it's important for me to mention that we don't have any official statements about this case yet. All we have is a rumor. And if this rumor is correct, this information will only reach us openly and widely in 2027. And okay, I know it's just a rumor, but I found this whole story very worrying. What's even weirder, in my opinion, is that this reminds me of the story from the Netflix series The Three-Body Problem, which is a series based on books, a trilogy written by Liu Cixin. If this really happens, I mean, if there really is an object coming toward Earth and that object is in fact an extraterrestrial ship, this guy Liu Cixin, he didn't write a fiction book, but instead he somehow connected with a future reality of planet Earth. The second book in his trilogy is called The Dark Forest. And we already have a video here on the channel explaining what the Dark Forest Enigma is. It's a really interesting topic also about extraterrestrials, and I recommend you check it out if you haven't watched it yet. I'll leave the link down below in the description of this video. Did the James Webb telescope find life on a planet in the constellation Leo? That's right, my dears, the James Webb telescope made a bizarre discovery. It found a molecule that is produced solely and exclusively on planets where life exists. On a planet in the constellation Leo, on an exoplanet. Well, you already know that the James Webb Telescope is a project by National Aeronautics and Space Administration with European Space Agency and Canadian Space Agency. And this telescope made the discovery on an exoplanet known as K218b, which is located 120 light years from Earth in the constellation Leo. This planet has a mass 8.6 times greater than the mass of Earth. K218b orbits a red dwarf star, K218. It is the only one among the celestial bodies that belongs to the sub-Neptunian category. But what makes this exoplanet especially interesting is that it is located within the so-called habitable zone of its star. In other words, K218b could become one of the key objects in the search for life in the universe. Research shows that the planet may have a hydrogen-rich atmosphere and a surface covered by liquid oceans. However, the most surprising discovery by the James Webb Telescope is the detection of dimethyl sulfide or dimethyl sulfide molecules in the atmosphere of K218b. This molecule is produced only by living organisms on Earth, especially by marine phytoplankton. And this topic has sparked an intense debate in scientific circles. According to some researchers, the discovery of dimethyl sulfide on K218b could mean that organisms capable of producing this molecule exist on that planet. In other words, have we been able to identify a planet with life beyond Earth? Madhusudan, who is an astronomer at the University of Cambridge, is the main person responsible for this discovery. And it was him who made the announcement of these results. He said, quote, "Traditionally, the search for life on exoplanets has mainly focused on smaller rocky planets, but larger planets are significantly more favorable for atmospheric observations. The abundance of methane and carbon dioxide and the scarcity of ammonia support the hypothesis that there may also be an ocean beneath the hydrogen-rich atmosphere on K218b. These early observations from James Webb also provided a possible detection of a molecule called dimethyl sulfide. On Earth, this is only produced by life. Most of the dimethyl sulfide that exists in Earth's atmosphere is emitted by phytoplankton in marine environments. So could there be liquid oceans on this planet? Could there be creatures on this planet? That's what the James Webb will help us answer very soon. And as soon as I have new information about the case, I'll bring it here to the page for you. Titan is the moon of Saturn. It's actually one of the only places in the solar system where the climate cycles are similar to Earth's, and the conditions there could possibly support some kind of life. The image captured through a 2.12 micron filter shows clouds and lower atmospheric haze on Titan, the moon that orbits Saturn. The correct image is a color composite using filters. Kraken Bay is considered a methane bay, while Beletef is made up of dark-colored sand dunes. Titan is the only body in the solar system with seas, rivers, and lakes, although they are not made of water but of hydrocarbons, like methane. Its unique properties deserve a more detailed study. This study is still being conducted. The James Webb Telescope captured this cold world on November 4th, 2023, and a team of astronomers identified 2 clouds in the atmosphere near the north pole of Saturn's moon. The researchers were very curious to see if they could track the evolution of these clouds. And they were worried that the clouds would disappear quickly. But when they looked at Titan 2 days later, the clouds were in the same places. They had just changed shape. The University of California, Berkeley is responsible for this research. The changes in Titan's clouds over a period of 30 hours from November 4th to 6th were observed using infrared cameras from the James Webb Space Telescope and the Keck Telescope. In this image here, you can see those clouds over there. Titan is the only moon in the solar system that has a dense atmosphere. And National Aeronautics and Space Administration will send a mission to Titan in 2027. The spacecraft is called Dragonfly, and it will be a probe capable of assessing whether the moon, with its strange chemistry, could be habitable for some forms of life. But don't get too excited. If we find life on Titan, it's going to be more like this than like this. But I am the all-seeing eye, and I keep track of absolutely everything that comes out in the news about these topics. So, if I find any news about a potential discovery on Titan's moon, I'll definitely bring it here to the page for you. I want to know what you think about this discovery, what you really believe exists on Titan's moon. Alright. right, now the James Webb telescope has outdone itself. It found a star that's older than our own universe. But wait, how is that possible? Well, I'm talking about the star Henry Draper 14,283, which is known as Methuselah's star because of its extreme age. It's estimated to be over 14 billion years old and is considered the oldest star in our galaxy. Surprisingly, it can be seen with binoculars and seems to be older than the universe itself. And this raises the question of how that's possible. Why? Because the standard estimate for the time since the Big Bang is 13.79 billion years. This number is based on the rate of expansion of the universe using Einstein's theory of relativity and has been confirmed by several methods. However, this estimate is currently facing at least 3 different challenges. The proponents of these alternative theories point to the existence of stars estimated to be over 13.8 billion years old, or those that are so close to that age that they shouldn't have had enough time to form. That star there, Henry Draper 140283, received a premium evaluation in a 2013 study using data from the Hubble telescope. And the Hubble telescope was able to estimate that the age of this star is 14.46 billion years, with a margin of error of 800 million years. This would potentially make the star older than the universe itself. But wait a minute. How could a star have formed before the formation of the universe? Does that make any sense? It doesn't make any sense. Because if there really is a star that's 14.5 billion years old, that suggests that the explosion that started the universe couldn't have happened less than 14 billion years ago. The Big Bang theory is so central to our cosmology that if it were refuted, it would lead to a significant scientific revolution. But neither of the views has the support of astrophysicists. Some suspect that our estimates of the time of the Big Bang may be a little off, and that our universe may have formed around 15 billion years ago. If this is proven, it would raise questions about the accuracy of our estimates of the universe's expansion rate. If the universe were 26 billion years old, we could expect to find stars that are 20 billion years old. Well, outside the Milky Way, the stars in the globular cluster M92 are believed to be about 13.8 billion years old. And the James Webb telescope has also found several very distant galaxies whose ages are still debated, but none of them seem significantly older than Henry Draper 140283. In other words, it's possible that our entire understanding of cosmology is wrong. And Henry Draper 140283 serves as a remarkable example of this mistaken knowledge of ours. But after all, how is the age of a star estimated? How do they know how old that star is? Well, the age of a star is usually estimated from its absolute brightness and composition. The early universe had only hydrogen and helium. Most of the heavier elements were formed only as a result of the death of the first stars. So, the lower the concentration of these elements, the older it is considered. However, this is still not an ideal method for assessing the age of a star. In other words, it could be that all of our thinking is completely wrong. That's how it is, right? We think we know things when in fact we don't. And true genius lies in recognizing that the more we know, the less we actually know. They say that ignorant people are full of certainties and geniuses are full of doubts. And I agree with that statement.